Hey everyone, so welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today I have an updated foundation routine. So this is my current go-to everyday kind of look. I do tend to focus on my skin on days where I don't want to wear a lot of makeup, so I'll tend to perfect my skin and then go very easy on the eyes and the lips. I'm going a little bit more easier on the eyes today than normal because I have very dry and sensitive lids at the moment, so I didn't want to have to rub the mascara off them later, so I just avoided the mascara. But yeah, hopefully you'll get a few tips from here on how to deal with dehydrated combination skin, which is what I am, and you can see some of the products that I'm using. I will explain everything throughout the video as we go along, so just keep watching. So I've said it before and I'll say it again, for me skin preparation is one of the most important things when it comes to applying your foundation. And this can obviously change depending on the time of the year. This particular time of the year, my skin can tend to get quite dry. It's just from being constantly stuck in front of the fire, and then from indoor heating, and then the harsh winds outside. So I do get very dehydrated. And I've already applied my moisturiser because I showered earlier on after the gym, so I'll show you what I put on. I am trying something new, which is kind of making my skin go a little bit hinky, but hopefully it'll get used to it. So this is the Hydraluron. So this is a facial moisture boosting serum, and this has a bit of a cult status online. Now this is something though that my skin just doesn't really know what to make of yet. It might just take a while to get used to it. It's doing kind of the opposite of what it should do, or it did for the first few days. So this is supposed to make your skin plump out and get really supple and hold on to so much water. But it actually made my skin go way drier than normal when I first started using it, so I'm not really sure the reason behind that, but it's kind of settled down again. And then another thing I've noticed about this is that if you're not careful, everything you put on top of it will peel off, so it'll actually come off in little bits. So I'm just kind of still getting used to it, but anyhow, I'm going to persist and see how we get on. Then I also put some of the Vichy Aqualia Thermal Serum on top of it, and I actually just repurchased this because I couldn't deal with how dry my skin was with only this, or dehydrated rather, so this has just perked it right back up to life. This is just an amazing product, and the reason I've gone back to this again, I actually was looking out for other serums to see if I could try something new, but so many of them contain alcohol and a few other ingredients that just totally negate any of the goodness in it, so I went back to this because it's just all good stuff. And then I let that settle in for a while. Now usually I'd go for a moisturiser with some SPF on top, but today I didn't just because I'm not leaving the house after the gym. So I went with my Vichy Aqualia Thermal Light Cream. This is the Dynamic Hydration Light Cream. Again, these are all kind of aimed towards dehydrated skin. And then I used my Vichy Idéalia Eyes Eye Contour Cream for my eye area. So that's it, and that's been soaking in or sinking into my skin for the last couple hours. Now I do wear a primer most days if I know that I'm going to be wearing makeup for a very long time. So the one that I like to use for the particular foundation I'm going to use today, which I'll show you in a sec, is the Sleek Control Shine and Prime. So when you have dehydrated areas, obviously you just want to make sure you're moisturising everywhere, but I also have an oily T-zone. So what I want to do is keep the rest of my face nice and hydrated, and you don't want this to dry out either, but I do need to help inhibit the oil production, so that's what this is going to do. And I'm just going to pop a tiny bit on my finger and then just put it where I need it, so that's around the nose. My forehead actually doesn't even get particularly oily, so calling it my T-zone isn't really accurate. It's really just around my nose and a little bit on my chin that gets oily. So with having a combination skin, a very much combination skin, where I am an oily central area and then normal to dry depending on the time of year everywhere else, it being quite dry and dehydrated at the moment with the mixture of the time of the year and then my skin reacting to whatever, I do want to deal with the dryness and the dehydration more than the oiliness. I'd rather my skin get a little bit shiny in the centre of my face and then just be nice and comfortable everywhere else, rather than it be matte here and then get really dry and cakey and flaky everywhere else, which obviously isn't a good look. So I am using quite a hydrating foundation at the moment, and this one is the Luxe Liquid Foundation by Glo-Minerals. This was sent to me there before Christmas, and I have been loving it and wearing it constantly since. But the colour I am is Porcelain, so you want to make sure you give this a good shake. Now it does contain minerals. I'll let you know a little bit about the ingredients in it. It's water based, and then the second ingredient is ethyl hexyl palmitate, which is basically a derivative of palm oil, which I know can be a little bit of a controversial subject for some people. So basically that palm oil derivative it kind of works as an emollient, but it's also used as an alternative to silicone as well in a lot of products. Then you've got neopentyl glycol I just want to pronounce this right. Basically the third ingredient anyhow is a film forming ingredient, so that's what makes it kind of last on the skin, and it's a bit of a thickener as well. And then you have an emollient and then silica powder, which helps to absorb oil, so it really does kind of give a little bit of that conditioning that you want for the skin, as well as helping to prevent, you know, your skin getting too oily. So like I said, I'm just going to give this a good shake and then put some onto the back of my hand. It's a very, very fluid foundation, so it'll keep running like that if I don't be careful. Definitely use a synthetic brush with this. I'm just going to use this guy here, which is a dual fibre brush from my Royal and Langnickel brush set that I got at Christmas. I'm going to start to buff that onto the skin. This also contains an SPF of 15, so it does give a little bit of sun protection, considering I don't really have anything else on today that does. And it also contains diamond powder. And there's no kind of special way of applying this, so I'm just going to buff it all over the face, and I just avoid the eye area, so I bring it kind of up as far as the orbital bone, and I'll apply my concealer after. And I love the finish that this foundation gives. It gives a really lovely luminous finish, but there is like a slightly mattifying effect as well because of the minerals and the powder in it. So next I'm going to move on to my concealer, and my go-to concealer for around the eye area is my Fit Me Concealer by Maybelline, and I'm the number 15. So I literally just dot that all around the darkest area, and I usually just use this as my like primer for my eyelids because I get very dry eyelids, so I don't need to use a drying like paint pot or anything like that if I don't need to or if I don't want to. And then this is my absolutely favourite brush for applying concealer, and it is the EB13 brush by Sedona Lace, which is just a synthetic blending brush. I just like to kind of bounce the product over the area and spread it out before buffing it in. And whatever's left on the brush then I kind of blend down onto the cheeks and over the nose and this whole central panel of the face really, so that there's a bit more unity to it. And because this is an everyday look, I really don't worry too much about colour correction. That would be a bit more kind of specialist. So I just go in with a little bit more concealer just to the very dark areas using my fingers, and then pat that in place. I mean, sometimes I'll use other concealers, but this would be my most used concealer for around the eyes. And then I might just put a little bit more down the nose and just along that central T-zone area. And then I find I get a little bit more coverage as well when I just use my fingers to pat it in place. Now I definitely have blemishes that I need to conceal, so you can see these guys here, and then this guy I had a bit of a go at this morning. But whereas I usually use my MAC, and I don't even have one here on my counter, but I'd usually use my MAC, the Pro Palette Concealer, the concealer, the palette that has 6 concealers, which is basically their studio finish, or I'd often use my Catrice Camouflage Cream Concealer, which is great, especially on a budget. But I've been using this guy a lot lately because it feckin' costs loads, so I want to get a good use out of it, and it's the Amazing Concealer, and I do really like it. So this is, I will do a separate video on it, but this is a very full coverage concealer. You need very little, like that will be more than enough. What I tend to do is apply it, just dot it where I need it, so whether you use your fingers or your brush, it doesn't really matter, but I dot it where I need it and then just let it sit for a minute before kind of patting it in place. And this actually also works really well as an eye primer, particularly for anyone like myself who has drier lids, because this is kind of a greasy product in that it contains mineral oil, so it will help to, you know, stop your lids from drying out. Mightn't be the most suitable though for very oily lids. And then I might put a little bit just on my chin and anywhere else where there's a little bit of redness still showing through, so just around the nose area. And even though this does have kind of a thick consistency, the warmth from your fingers really helps to melt it in place really well. So I'm just going to start bouncing that over the blemishes and then just use the brush again to blend around the edges. And another thing that I discovered this is quite good for as well is as a lip erase if you want to wear you know, a lighter colour on your lips. And I have been wearing kind of pinky colours a bit more lately, so this is the stage that I would do this at, and less is more. The first time I tried it I put a good bit on and it was just too much. You don't actually need a huge amount to take down the colouring on your lips. But But again, because like the top ingredients is like mineral oil and you know, basically kind of the same as Vaseline, it actually works really well on the lips. And then with that much in place, I'm going to go in with my Mineralize SkinFinish Natural by MAC, which of course is my go-to kind of holy grail powder, and I'm going to use my go-to holy grail powder brush, which is actually the blush brush by Real Techniques from the regular line. And then I just literally bounce this over everything. I've got concealer on my hair, but I usually kind of start over the areas where there are blemishes, and then I'll go over everything else then. But I do think bouncing, when like kind of, when I say bounce, I mean kind of pressing, but I'm just doing it quickly, so that's why it's bouncing. When you press your powder on rather than like wipe it on, it's going to set much better than if you were just wiping it on. Like, it'll actually set it in place better. And then when you're touching up throughout the day, you can do the quick kind of wiping thing, but for the initial powder, I do like to like press it in place. And I find I still have a little bit of a like a radiance to the skin with this. It doesn't like totally matte it out, which is something that's kind of important to me. I don't like a very, very heavily matte face. It depends on my mood, but definitely not when my skin's on the drier side. And then next I would apply some contour. So this is what I use most of the time, and it's the NYX Taupe Blush. I'm going to use this guy, which is from Charles Fox, and it's just this small little kind of, there's no proper name to it. It's like 81460/43, so it's just this nice little kind of small headed blush brush or contour brush, whatever you want to call it. I swirl that into the NYX Taupe Blush, and then I always start up there close to the ear and then kind of bring it down towards the mouth and stop, you know, close to the outside of your eye. You don't want to bring it in too far. And I do tend to bring it up around the temples as well and work it into the hairline. And this is a brilliant contour powder for pale skin because, you know, it is kind of greyish enough that it's not going to add too much warmth. Again, I'm just going to run this up along the hairline. And this spot is in like the worst place ever for when you're doing contouring, because you do tend to kind of wipe away the concealer a little bit. Like, it's not too bad. That concealer stays pretty well, but it will start to show through a little bit. And then I tend to just wipe off my brush and then start to buff out the contour, because I don't like to go too heavy for daytime for contouring. Like, just give a hint of a cheekbone without it looking too harsh. For nighttime, you know, my actual foundation wouldn't change at all. It's just that my contouring might get a little bit stronger. And then for contouring my nose, I use this guy here, which is from that same Royal and Langnickel brush set that I got at Christmas time. And I use that to contour my nose using the same powder. So I just kind of concentrate that on the tip. You know, my nose is a lot wider here at the end than it is up here where it's quite narrow. So I don't want to contour up along the narrow area because you don't want to make it appear any more narrow. And then I will usually go back in with my face powder just to help soften it out, because again, for daytime you don't want your contour to be too obvious. I find it just kind of helps settle it back into the skin a little bit. Often at this stage as well, I'll just use that small brush to apply my face powder. Say if I'm not wearing a lot of makeup, I'll usually just apply my face powder to my eyelids, and then quickly I'll usually go back in with the contour powder as well and use that just to apply a little bit of definition into the crease. Next I'm going to apply a little bit of blush. I don't always wear blusher, it depends on the rest of my makeup, but if I'm going very, very easy on the eyes, I will use a little blush. So I'm going to use some of this guy by Essence, which is one of their Silky Touch blushes, and it's in number 10 Adorable, so it's that really cute kind of light pink colour. And when I do blush, I always go in with my brush and then tap off a little bit onto a piece of tissue, because when you're pale you really don't want to go too crazy. And then I like to just lightly tap it in place. I tend to tap the blush in place rather than swipe it on, because then you can kind of build it up a little bit slower. and then concentrate a little bit more on that outer edge and bring it up towards the temple. But you have to make sure it's on top of the contour and that there's no gap between the contour and your blusher. And then again, I would often go back in with my face powder and just go over the blusher so that it settles into the skin really well. Now, this might seem like it's taken for ages because I'm explaining everything, but really this would only take me like maybe 10 minutes in the morning. And then I don't always wear a highlighter every day, but I do like to if I have the time, like if I'm not totally rushing. And my go-to highlighter is this guy here by e.l.f., which is the baked highlighter in Moonlight Pearl. So I'll usually just pick it up on the brush, or else I'll use my finger. I often use my finger for this one, and literally just tap it there in place. So you tap it over the high points of your face, so on top of your cheekbones, and then, you know, onto my brow bone if I'm not using much other eye makeup like I was saying earlier on, onto the centre of my eyelids, and then I'll often just stick it in there because it takes no time at all, just to throw it onto the inner corner as well, and then onto the cupid's bow. And then all that would be left to do there is apply a lip in my brows and a little bit of mascara usually, which I'm skipping today because my eyelids are on the sensitive side. So what I used on my lips was this Colour Sensational lip liner by Maybelline in Sweet Pink. A lot of people were asking what this was in a video when I wore it recently. It's just this lovely, exactly like that, a really light pretty pink, and it's such a lovely smooth lip pencil as well. And then I got this really pretty pink lipstick because I've been really getting into like light pinks lately, and this is Colour Sensational as well, and it's Petal Pink number 168, again like by Maybelline. So I think that they do quite nice lipsticks. You know, it looks very bubblegum pink there, but it goes on lovely because it's not too opaque. And then I just use some of my ProLongWear Quiet Brunette gel set by MAC on my brows. So I hope this was helpful, guys, and that you picked up a few tips along the way. I will list everything down below as per usual, but I'll just see you all in my next video. So till then, take care. So long, guys.